Hi everyone, Corey here with Team Cramer Fishing, and in this video we are going to review St. Croix Premier Spinning Rod, specifically the 6-foot fast action version. Okay, if you watch some of my previous videos, specifically review videos on rods, you'll see that what I've been looking for is the best kind of multi-species, multi-purpose fishing rod. And what I'm doing right now is I'm going through and I'm really focusing on the lighter end because we use a lot more lighter tackle than most people. So we're aiming for the 6-foot size, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller, but right in that range. And generally speaking, light power. In some cases, we might go up to a medium light because, or maybe even down to an ultralight at some point. We haven't done that yet because different manufacturers have different standards for what they rate on their power for their rods. Also, I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I'm not sponsored by anybody's competition or anything. I bought this rod myself with my own money, and so this is just going to be my opinion. Just because I'm not sponsored doesn't mean I'm right, but I'm just going to tell you my experience with the rod, what I think about it for the type of fishing that we do, and you can check out our fishing videos if you want to see the types of fish that we've been catching with these rods. Okay. So let me begin by saying sort of what the St. Croix is up against right now. Not too long ago I made a video talking about the Ugly Stick 6-foot light power GX2 and how I thought that it was, at least of the rods that I've tested so far, it's the best multi-species spinning rod that I've been able to find. Where you can just catch a very wide variety of fish, from the tiniest fish up to very big fish. So that's kind of what the St. Croix is up against in terms of competition, which is important because there's a lot of rod companies out there. There's a lot of different types of rods that you can buy. So you want to know which one's the best. That's kind of the service that I'm providing here. I'm just giving you my opinion, so you don't have to buy all these rods yourself. I'm doing that instead. So let's begin with the pros of the rod. One of the pros, at least I consider it a pro, is that it is made in the USA, which I don't know how good the camera is going to pick that up, but you have a little symbol there. So I think St. Croix is based in Wisconsin. I live in Iowa. They're a neighboring state. I like to support local companies as close as I can get, and I think it's great that they're making rods here in the USA. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more money for that, as long as the other qualities of the rod are there that I'm looking for. So that's a pro. The other pro is it's very, very lightweight. I order a lot of my rods just because I have specific things that I'm looking for, specific characteristics. I actually walked into the store and bought this one, so I was able to pick it up, and I'm gonna doubt there's a lighter rod on the market of this size. I mean, it's really nice. You're not gonna be, you could cast this thing days and days and days and not really get tired because of the weight. So that's definitely a pro. Also, it's a pretty rod. I mean, I like the coloring. I like the style. I like the way. I like the work they've done on the guides in general. I like a heavier duty guide most of the time, but of the really light guides that I've seen, I really like these, and they've done well. They don't really bend a whole lot, like you would expect when you pick this thing up, it's just like feather light, and it looks really, really good. And it feels like they've attached them really well, and it has a nice gloss coat on the finish of the rod, and it has this little dual kind of hook keeper there too, which is nice. So it's a pretty rod. It feels good. It's well balanced too. We were using either a 1000 or a 1500 size spinning reel on this while we were using it, which is pretty lightweight, and it balances really, really well. So I see why St. Croix has a lot of fans. it's a beautiful rod. It's lightweight, and it balances well with the spinning gear that you're going to be putting on it. It also has better casting distance than the Ugly Stick. Not a lot better, you know, maybe 15% up to maybe 20% in some situations. So, you know, it has those benefits over the Ugly Stick too. It's prettier, it casts farther. Balance is about the same, but it's definitely lighter weight. So now let's get into the cons. And you know, I know St. Croix has a lot of fans, but I think people need to be careful, especially if you're thinking of this as a multi-species spinning rod. For me, well, let me put it this way. Almost all their rods are fast action. So if you know me, I actually like more of a bend throughout the rod. And with the fast action rod, the bend is going to be more toward the upper third. Now, a lot of times if you get a light power rod, even if it's medium fast or fast, you still get a bend farther down just because the rod is skinnier. The case with this is the bottom third of this is really, really stiff. I mean, there's a lot of backbone here. Now, but one of the negatives is St. Croix doesn't really make very many moderate action rods. I mean, unless you go down to the ultralight size, I looked through their catalog and it's mostly just fast, extra fast, fast. So what that means is it puts a lot of stress on a thin rod like this, especially if you have a stiff backbone on this section of the rod. And also what I've found is, like, if you're fishing from the shore and you're lifting, like, say, I don't know, like a 1.5 pound bass out of the water, you're flipping a bass. What it does is it forms kind of like a springboard up here. So it can bounce it. A lot of times a couple times I've had them flip off, and I think a lot of it's because the bass wiggles and this rod is just, the fast action of it is enough to kind of bounce it almost. And that actually can happen in the water too. I've seen it happen a couple times in the water when my daughter was using this rod, because I eventually let her use it, where fish could get off close to shore while you're trying to get them, because that same kind of bouncing action, it creates a little bit of slack, and a lot of times it's enough for the fish to get off. So I wouldn't recommend this for shore fishermen. This seems to me to be more of a walleye and trout fishing from a boat type of rod. And because for crappie, there's just too much backbone here. You just don't need that much. And so it's almost too much for crappie. But if you were from a boat, I think you'd have less problems if you're netting those fish coming up. You're dealing with fish that are down deeper, and you're trying to get them up. I think the fast action would come in a little bit more handy in that situation. So if you're always fishing from a boat, then some of this isn't really going to matter for you, but we're basically always fishing from shore, so it does matter for us, and I know a lot of other people do. So I wish St. Croix would make some moderate action versions of this, but right now, as far as I can tell, they don't. If you work for St. Croix and you want to send me one, I'm more than happy to test it out. So maybe my biggest complaint is that, and this has been my complaint with a couple other rods that I've tested too, is this handle is super duper duper skinny. I mean, it is, and honestly, when I first got it, I don't like these when they screw up from the bottom. I mean, I can tolerate it, but it has a long screw here. I mean, so it gets really uncomfortable when you're holding it. And even if you're holding it up here, they don't really give you a whole lot of space to put your hand. So I usually hold it down here with just my trigger finger up. It honestly got so uncomfortable, I just couldn't use it. I mean, it became unusable. I made a grip for it to go over it to try to give me a little bit more, and it just threw the balance of the rod off, and that didn't work. So finally what I didn't want to just come out. I was really disappointed too, because I was really optimistic about this rod and willing to kind of spend some extra money to try it out. So what I did was I gave it to my daughter Vivian, who fishes a lot. She catches hundreds and hundreds of fish, and she really liked using the rod. Other than losing a couple fish close to shore, which was what I was talking about earlier, It worked pretty well for her, but the other con is that this rod is pretty fragile. Not only does it create stress points, I'm not exactly sure how we broke this, so I'm not going to get too, overly negative on it, but the tip, we came home one night after we were smallmouth fishing, and when I looked the next day, the very tip of the rod was broken off. And I realized that happens, but the fact is it hasn't happened with any of the ugly sticks. So this costs 3 times as much. It's a $120 rod. The ugly sticks are $40 rods. I could get 3 of those for the price of this one, have the extra durability, have the comfort. It's not as light and pretty as this one, but for me, this just doesn't measure up on especially on the multi-species shore fishing aspect. I think there might be a place for this in like a walleye fisherman's arsenal, if you're fishing from a boat in like kind of deeper lakes and you're pulling fish up to like a boat. That extra back will give you a little bit more control. But so for me, the rod's too expensive for what you get. It's fragile, and I will say that even though I don't know exactly how the tip of that broke off, if you watch Extreme Philly Fishing's videos, he had an Avid St. Croix, and it snapped in the middle when he had a little alligator. He was kind of trying to, by little I mean like 3 or 4 pounds. He was trying to pull up the bank that he had caught, and it snapped kind of right in this area, which is right where you would expect these fast action rods that are really stiff to break. So it's a fragile rod. I mean, it's not just us. And while it does have some pros, I mean, I just can't really recommend it. I would gladly take 3 ugly sticks over this particular model, and I'll try another St. Croix sometime if they come out with something that, especially if it's like moderate fast, kind of in the range that we're looking for. So that's my review of the St. Croix Premier. Definitely has some positives. I see why people fall in love with him. Not for me though. I can't recommend this rod at all. I would spend my money on something different. So we're gonna keep trying to look for some more rods in the same kind of category. The next one I have coming up is is going to be a Fenwick Eagle. So I've been testing this out. I had a St. Croix for 4 or 5 months probably before it broke, and the Fenwick Eagle is next up. We'll see if it can dethrone the ugly stick. All right, thanks for watching the review. If you want to see us fish with all these rods, subscribe to the channel. Go check out some of our old videos. We catch a lot of fish, and we have a lot of fun. All right, see you next time. Later.